Hello everyone and welcome back to the Shizen Hogo-Ku Zoo here on Planet Zoo in our franchise mode. Today we're going to be handling a project that involves our red pandas. As you may know, we did give them a habitat a while ago which replaced our old giant panda habitat. However, that's really not doing well for them, so we're going to give them a new habitat. And it's going to take place right where the old gharial habitat was, so we're repurposing this land. And I think this was the right location to do it because what we're going to do is we're going to set up some sort of breeding system so we at least have two habitats for these red pandas. Now, we first started off with this by replacing the land and bringing up the land where our viewing area currently was for our old gharial habitat, and we just kind of fixed that up a little bit. We repurposed a lot of the decorations from the outside. So the little planter area or the little tree area, that little trim line there with all those bushes and trees is going to stay there. So we repurposed it so we didn't have to do too much work on that part. And the main reason why we're giving them a new habitat is, one, because they don't really have a lot of room, and two, they do get stressed in the area that they have as of right now. So we're hopefully giving them a habitat that's not going to be as much of an issue as the last one. Now, I do have a few concerns about this one, but it definitely results in fixing a lot of the concerns that I had for the last habitat. Now, I do want to say, I said this in maybe a few videos ago, I don't really recall, but I've been doing a lot more work on the Shizen Hogo-Ku Zoo, unlike our other zoos, and that's mainly because I want to finish this one up. I really want to get this project out of the way, and it's one of my favorite zoos, so therefore, if we need to come back to it later, we can when, we decide we need to add a new animal. So that's great, and everything's coming together. It's working out quite nicely. But with this habitat specifically, getting back to the habitat side of things, we're going to give it a nice little water barrier toward the front of our viewing area. And we're going to use a plaster wall that sort of looks like concrete, sort of doesn't type thing. And we're going to use that as a visual barrier or a space barrier from our guests in comparison to our red pandas. And we want to do this because these red pandas are very shy, and it's something that I tend to ignore very often, so I'm trying to get better with that. I thought by giving them a nice little water space, the red pandas would come up to drink water. However, they will avoid going up there and getting close to guests and then complaining about their stress, basically. That's what I'm mainly focusing on in this. We also do continue our castle wall from our gharial habitat, and I thought this worked out pretty well because it brings through the theme a little bit, and it kind of puts in a nice little transition. Now, I know this happens in a few areas where our guests will actually try to look through actual walls and stuff like that from construction material, so things like castle walls and basically anything that you make a building out of. They tend to look through it a little bit, and I've had that issue a few times, so I'm hoping that they will avoid stopping by the path and looking straight through a solid wall. That would be really appreciated. I know it does have some issues sometimes during the null barrier, but we're going to try to avoid it as much as possible. Now, as you do notice, we do have that little keeper's hut that was toward the gharial habitat side. We do give it a nice little section in the back, so we do have enough room for our staff, and if we need to add some staff utilities or staff buildings, we can do that so as well. I'm considering maybe bringing in a vet's office closer to the center of our zoo, because the only one that we have is close to the front of the park, or we may add in something different. I'm not quite sure yet. But back there toward that little keeper's hut, we did open up the wall, and that was kind of part of my intention. We did open up the wall, so if we need to expand, we could. Now, it was a little bit difficult to make this little easing transition toward our viewing area with the plaster walls that are supposed to replicate concrete over near the water here, and it was a little bit difficult. People may step into it a little bit, some people may not, but I tried to do it as great as possible. But skipping forward here, you can see that I finished that, and I have the walls done all of a sudden. Yeah, it took me a minute to get down the walls, so I skipped forward through that. But you can see where the two habitats are divided from. Now, I try to make it so the null barrier was as close to the wall as possible so people don't try to look through it to see if that would fix the issue. But we also do have a few other things that I ended up doing, such as putting in the barriers, mostly that wooden wall type structure, and I tried to raise it to an appropriate length, but I also ended up adding in some chain linked fences, and I mainly did this so people could see through it a little bit. However, I also did it because there were a few little points where I thought maybe our red pandas could try to escape out of the habitat that they're living in. So I wanted to try to avoid that as much as possible. And I don't know if that really solved the issue of them climbing out. I still haven't really tested out their climbing out situation because I literally just moved them in. But once we finish that, we need to make sure that it had an appropriate living area. And I got my mind rolling a little bit because red pandas don't really live like on the ground. They kind of burrow themselves inside of like trees and like rock crevices and stuff like that for nesting. So I gave them some nice wooden boxes and I customized them. I don't know if they work yet, but we shall see. But what they'll end up doing is they'll end up living in these boxes. So for each red panda, there's a box, and I think I added it in 3 total. So it took me a minute, but I made this box and it worked out very well for them. So they can actually climb into these boxes. They're not necessarily on the ground, they're a little bit high off the ground, so hopefully they'll climb up right into them. And it's really nice because their habitat kind of sits back a little bit. That water really gives it a nice like space barrier from the rest of the people in our zoo. It really works out well because the pandas aren't getting stressed out as much as they were. I really am excited about that because that was a huge issue that we had with the other one. Now, in order to repurpose the space by that old panda habitat, I was considering maybe adding in some sort of exhibit area, so for like the smaller animals inside those big glass boxes. I'm thinking we may make a building of some sort like that. Now, that being said, I also do want to mention the fact that the pangolins are also getting very stressed, so we may also look into replacing their habitat, moving it somewhere else, or just fixing it up. I'm debating between the two. Let me know in the comments whether or not I should move the pangolin habitat, or if I should just fix up the building so that my pangolins aren't getting stressed. I'm thinking that we use that whole entire space instead of using so little space for them now. But back to the red pandas. As you can see with this box here, I added in a little bit of bedding on top of some of the climbable wood pieces. So all the wood pieces in there except for the planks they can climb on. I brought in like a blueprint just to throw in something kind of random as well. So these boxes can kind of go like anywhere. So I kind of get some sort of rough idea down of where I may want to place them. I end up putting 3 in like I said earlier. I set one toward the back because what I want to do is like whenever the red pandas have babies or something like that, they have another little place to go and sleep at. I thought that was very important. Now, rock is used quite a bit in a lot of the habitats, and I try not to use it too much. These guys do live in a temperate and taiga biome, so I bring in some temperate rock, and I know we said that we would kind of split the sections up a little bit in regards to our biome, so like one side of the park is more temperate, one side is more tropical. For the purposes of making sure our animals are accommodated properly, I wanted to make sure that, we didn't stay consistent with that because the animals just need a new habitat. So we want to make sure we focus on that management style a little bit. So the rocks kind of give it a little bit more of a different feel. It's not like the rocks are all around the habitat like the gharials or something like that, along with a lot of the other habitats. We try to put it near a lot of steep slopes, so it kind of breaks it up a little bit, so it makes the land look a little bit more natural. Works out pretty well. For the areas that I couldn't fix as much, I end up putting in some plants as well. So the great thing about this habitat as well, there is no shortage of foliage. I end up putting plenty in. I put some near the water. I put a lot near the rocks as well, a lot near the steep slopes. And we try to make it seem like it's very natural in the field of habitat. Now, I do want to mention I do not end up editing the habitat next to it. I'll do that off screen. And it's probably going to mimic the same as this one, but obviously with a few little differences in it. I don't plan to make it exactly the same. That's not my intention. And I understand that the viewing area is very small. So I also want to know if you guys think I should remove the section of where I had that little coffee shop, that little castle structure right by that area, if I should extend the viewing area, or if I should just leave it as is. As of right now, the main purpose of it is just so if people wanted to kind of take a peek over there, they could, but it's really not the main viewing area for our red pandas. It's really just more of an area for where, we can set up our breeding system up a little bit better. So we want to make sure our animals aren't necessarily, fighting in one habitat just so we can, kind of fix the breeding system a little bit. So as you can see, we end up adding in a bunch of plants toward our area. We need to make sure we bring in our red pandas, so that's what I end up doing next. So I think this habitat looks very nice. I obviously end up editing it a little bit. I kind of forgot about some of the, like the food areas and some of the enrichment items a little bit, so I had to make sure I added that in, which I ended up doing. It it was kind of an afterthought this time. But making sure that our red pandas are actually happy, we want to make sure that we actually provide the proper guest facilities. So we make sure we end up adding in some benches, some nice little areas for people to throw away the garbage, and we put up some do not disturb signs. Now, with that, we want to make sure our guests don't join the red pandas, so we do put in a little fence barrier. We used one that was similar to our old red panda habitat, and I just edited it a little bit and kind of did something a little bit new. So we ended up using that. So the way that we ended up adding that in is we brought it toward the front, closer to the pathway, so it kind of broke that little inconsistency between the supposedly concrete structure there along with the pathway, so it doesn't look very consistent, or it doesn't look inconsistent in any sort of way. It flows a little bit better and is more easy on the eyes. So we fixed that up, and what ended up happening is we also brought in some education boards and stuff like that. I brought the do not disturb signs closer to our fence, so it's kind of integrated in the fence as well. I thought that was very important, as we don't want things to kind of like stick up out of nowhere and, you know, just make things look kind of cruddy. So we wanted to try to avoid that as much as possible as well. I had a little bit of trouble over nearby our little coffee shop. I'm still debating whether or not we should take that away, so please let me know in the comments once again. I really want to know what you guys think, because it's either going or it's either staying. It's no in between. So once we brought in the education boards, we threw the red panda education boards toward the front, and we brought some, I think we replaced the education board for like conservative education in regards to like deforestation and what I believe was it poaching? I think it was deforestation and poaching, which were the two things that red pandas are most commonly declining in their population for, is because of those two things. So we brought the education board and we put it right in the planters a little bit, so it kind of blended in a little bit more. I thought it was the proper place to put it just because it broke up the plants a little bit and added something in. It just works out a little bit more, so you know, we're not blocking the view of the pandas as well, so we don't want to put those close toward the front. So it ends up working well. We end up throwing in some coolers as well. We try hiding that the best we can, and other than that, we really fixed up this habitat and we brought in a new one. Works out great. So let me know what you think down in the comments down below. Give me some feedback on anything about the zoo or anything about the habitat. Please give this video a thumbs up if you want to help support the channel. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed already, and I shall see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.